Hello everyone, this is Lauren Robinson. I'm one of the historians at the Ilion Free Public Library, and today I'm going to talk about the history behind one of Ilion's historic churches. This is part of a series we're doing on the library's new YouTube channel featuring all of Ilion's historic churches, and today I'm focusing on the Presbyterian Church. Before we get started, please be sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and click on the bell icon to get notifications as we continue posting new content to our channel. And with that, let's get started. So in my other videos about Ilion's churches, we learned that the Baptists, Methodists, and Episcopalians all established their own worship groups in Ilion and used the old Union House of Worship that was located on the corner of Otsego and 2nd Streets, where the First Baptist Church is in Ilion today. They then raised enough funding to build their own separate and independent churches, and the worship house was eventually demolished. We also learned that the Catholics in Ilion never used the Union House of Worship and started establishing their own local mission as more and more German and Irish Catholics settled in Ilion seeking employment at Remington Arms. In comparison, the Presbyterians also never used the Union House of Worship and had their own independent start in Ilion, similar to the Catholics. The First Presbyterian Church in Ilion was organized in 1871 during a meeting of the Presbytery of Utica, held in Little Falls. Aaron Brown and A.H. Sumner attended the meeting on behalf of the citizens of Ilion, asking for a local church to be organized, and Reverend Sheldon Haynes was appointed to help with the organization. After that, the church gained funding and was officially organized on May 28, 1871. Their first worship services were held in Mechanics Hall on 1st Street. I think Mechanics Hall functioned like a municipal building with a communal meeting place for the village prior to 1881, when the school that used to be on Morgan Street burned. Ilion's current municipal building was built there later after the school was demolished. After the church was organized in 1871, they established a Sunday school a year later in 1872. D.M. Rankin was appointed the church's first pastor, and by then the church had 18 members as the start of their congregation. In 1874, land was bought on Morgan Street, and the first Presbyterian church was built. Our records at the library show that the land lot was bought for $4,500, and the total construction cost for the building totaled $35,000. It was dedicated on April 6, 1875, and the first official in-building service was held that same year. For several years after, the church dealt with lingering debt from construction costs until they got a generous donation from Henry H. Benedict, and the congregation matched it. Benedict was a Remington Arms employee and later partnered with Clarence W. Siemens and William Wyckoff to form a typewriting firm. It eventually evolved into the Remington Typewriter Company. By 1893, the church was debt-free. After that, attention shifted to organizing clubs and various social groups for the church. Two of the first groups organized included a women's home group and a foreign missionary society, organized in March of 1886. That campaigned to aid various demographic populations around the world. Over the course of the church's history, they hosted several missionaries stationed internationally, including visitors from the Congo, India, Alaska, Brazil, and more. In 1890, the church choir was organized. Until then, the church hosted the occasional soloist and quartet performances during their Sunday services, but they did not have a regular weekly choral performance. By the early 1900s, a junior choir and a cherub choir were also organized for teenagers and the Sunday school children, along with a Boy Scouts troop and a men's brotherhood. Then disaster struck on Sunday, February 11, 1912. Soon after Sunday school was dismissed for the day, someone noticed smoke coming from the church's windows and reported it. A fire had started near the organ and destroyed most of the building. Firefighters struggled for several hours to put out the blaze, as a large crowd of spectators from Ilion and the surrounding local areas gathered to watch. The temperature that day was near 0 degrees Fahrenheit, causing freezing conditions. In the end, the church's slate roof caved in, and roughly $50,000 worth in damage were estimated. You can see a lot of the damage in these photos here, including the ice layer that formed from the firefighters' hoses. When it was all over, all that was left standing were the walls and steeple. Here are some more photos of the water damage and the firefighters. On September 17, 1912, a new cornerstone was presented and laid by Alexander Jarvis. It also functioned as a time capsule, and the church included a Bible, some newspapers, a historic record of the church, and membership lists of the church's clubs and organizations in it. In 1913, the newly rebuilt church was rededicated, and a new organ was bought with bequeathed funds from Mr. Frederick Weller of Mohawk. Mr. Weller lived on West Street in Mohawk with his wife and daughter until his death in 1912. He was an avid reader and book collector, and their house and land became the Weller Public Library and Weller Park in Mohawk today, when the property was deeded to the village as a library. As services for the church continued, a Girl Scouts troop was established in 1916. Regular meetings weren't scheduled until 1930, but we believe this was the first Girl Scout troop organized in Ilion. These photos show what the interior of the church looked like before the fire and then later after they rebuilt. During the war years, the church celebrated its 50th anniversary in 1921. By then, they had 780 members in their congregation. In 1926, a mortgage burning ceremony was held, and in 1936, the tower chimes at the church were dedicated. The junior choir was also restarted that year, and in 1938, the 25th anniversary of the fire was observed. Members of the congregation served in both World War I and World War II, and at least 14 died in the armed forces. A memorial plaque was added to the sanctuary on December 30th, 1945. In the early 1940s, the church celebrated its 70th anniversary, and in 1943, the organ was rededicated after several parts were replaced. In 1956, some loosened brickwork and rotting foundation timbers caused the church's steeple to start leaning. Ilion police set up a temporary barricade, and services were temporarily held in the Ilion Municipal Building auditorium, while a shorter 80-foot-tall steeple was built. Construction was finished in August, but a year later their boiler exploded as well, so services were relocated again to the Ilion Masonic Temple for a brief time. The church marked its 90th anniversary in 1961, and a year later, a member of the church, Miss Albert Henstreet, was ordained as an elder of the church. She became the first female member of the church to be elected to their governing session. In 1969, a new manse was built for the church, and the old one located on Morgan Street was demolished to create more parking space. A year later, the church was refinished with new paint, carpet, and upholstery, and in 1971, the church marked its centennial celebration. Next year, the church will be celebrating its 150th anniversary as well, so be sure to keep an eye out for information about that if you're a member or interested in the event. So that sums up what we know about the origins behind the Presbyterian Church in Ilion. We also have some general information about ecumenical services held over the years by all 5 of Ilion's main churches, including some service programs, cookbooks, and bylaws from the Church Women United group in Ilion. The women's group was or is affiliated with the Ilion Council of Churches and other state and national chapters of Church Women United. Their mission, in short, is to bring together church women, regardless of denomination, into a non-denominational Christian fellowship and celebrate faith in Jesus Christ. Together, they would host themed ecumenical programs like a World Day of Prayer or a Fellowship Day. In 1979, for example, they held a World Community Day where the ladies studied various urban issues that affected everyone communally and hosted presentations about their findings concerning topics like education, housing, transportation, employment, and healthcare issues. These services and others hosted by other ecumenical groups provided opportunities for members of any Christian denomination to congregate together, embrace their shared values, and enjoy things like luncheons and holiday dinners together. And that's it for today's talk. We'll have one more video out soon about some of the other smaller church groups around Ilion, and that will be the end of our church history series. If you have any questions or want to know more about any of Ilion's churches, you can visit our library's history room to access our collections, or you can call or email us. Before we go, I just want to thank everyone for listening in. We hope you enjoy these videos, and be sure to look for more presentations like this on our YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Bye everyone!